Clayton Cornelious is our guest on Personally Speaking, a great actor and producer from the Broadway community, a man of goodness and faith. Stay with us. Welcome to Personally Speaking. I'm your host, Msgr Jim Lisante, and Broadway veteran Clayton Cornelious joins me now. Clayton was recently in the Broadway hit Ain't Too Proud, The Life and Times of the Temptations, and his other Broadway credits include Beautiful, Scottsboro Boys, A Chorus Line, The Music Man, and The Lion King. In addition to his acting career for the past several years, Clayton has been a Broadway investor in shows including MJ the Musical, Hadestown, and Ain't Too Proud. Clayton Cornelious was the lead producer for the Broadway comedy Chicken and Biscuits, and he's a member of Broadway Inspirational Voices, a gospel ensemble comprised of dozens of singers from Broadway and off-Broadway shows. He's here with us today to talk about his life, his 22 years of Broadway experience, and his faith, the faith and values that sustain him. Joining me now, I'm so pleased to welcome to Personally Speaking, the Broadway actor and singer, Clayton Cornelious. Clay, thanks for coming on our program. And I want to start with a question that you may have heard before, which is, we're all products of the family of origin, for better or worse. Your family of origin, it sounds to me from what I've read, like they did a good job. What did your family do right in raising you?
Oh, I've thought about that over the years, actually, as I have been sort of climbing to the ladder of my own success, or what we would call our success for ourselves. And I think I had a really good mix of parenting. I think that like we had spoke about sort of earlier, that I was exposed to my large African American family and all that comes with it. Mm-hmm. And then I also had these really great parents who sort of never helped me back, sort of allowed me to do things, but they were always there for support. And I'm glad that I had both of my parents there supporting me at all times. And I think that is, that's not everybody's situation, but I think that definitely support from the parental area is really great for any kid, to know that their parents are behind them with anything they do is a really great feeling.
Was there any discipline in the way you were raised?
Oh my God, yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of old school when it comes to parenting. I believe that kids should never talk back to their parents, that they're always right, regardless if they're wrong. I never spoke back to any of my aunts or uncles. I would never in a million years. I have an uncle who, suffers from addiction, from drugs. And if he said, take me across town right now, to some place, I would do it with my mother's consent, but I wouldn't, question it pretty much. I would sort of go with the flow unless I was obviously in danger. But, I just believe that my, what you call the people who are over top of you, your, I don't know. I just believe that, all of your
respect for your elders, basically.
Yeah, respect for your elders. Exactly. My elders are always going to be correct, and I'm going to respect them regardless if they're not. So,
I know one of the stars of one of your recent plays was Norm Lewis, and I was amazed when we were interviewing Norm to have him every other word he was saying, sir, and yes, sir. And I'm saying, would you stop with the sir stuff? He said, no, this is the way I was raised. He said, he said, I was raised in a family where anyone older than me in any position, I had to give a certain respect to. And it sounds like you had a similar experience too. Now, Clay has been, for our listeners and watchers, pretty upfront about the fact that faith is important to him. And I'm thinking, Clay, that when we had Kelly O'Hara or Victoria Clark, pardon me, they both said the same thing, that they found in the arts community that talking God was not always something that made them very popular, that it wasn't something that most folks in the arts were at peace talking about. They have great comfort in doing it, and so do you. Tell us a little bit about the background on faith. Why are you so comfortable being a man of faith and talking about it?
I was raised in a church, And, I grew up never being embarrassed of who I was and where I come from. And once we sort of hide, sort of like praying at a table when I was growing up, or, you never really wanted to be, that person. My parents taught me early on in life, and my family actually, never be embarrassed, to be a man of God, to be a representative of that. And I think that carried that into my life, every day. That makes you unique, that makes you special in a very good way. And even though people may seem like they're looking down on it, or they're like, what is he doing? I think they sort of admiring it in many ways. We've had, when I was younger, and we would, our family would hold hands and pray at a table. We would have families come over and say, wow, I just want to say thank you so much for displaying that for us, because we've been trying to teach our kids, or it's really nice to see that, that people still have faith, and still pray and still, worship, so I've always held that close to my heart. So, and I do believe that there's a difference in doing culturally different shows, like Black shows versus a more majority white show. And I've noticed that in the shows that I've been in that were majority white, that wasn't a thing for some reason. And then in culturally in a Black show, they have on the PA, there's at 5 minutes, there's prayer time on stage. There's a prayer circle,
I've watched the million award shows in my time, and especially for the Tony Award. But I'm always amazed at how comfortable what you're saying African American actors and actresses are when it comes to, I want to thank Jesus as my Lord and Savior. And I'm thinking, I'm not hearing this from too many white guys. Why is that? There's a comfort level that I love about a lot of people in the African American community. Let's go to something that's very much related to one of the hearts of our faith as Christians is to buy into the message of Jesus. And one of the key messages, it seems to me, is thy kingdom come, thy will be done. How well or how poorly does E. Clay embrace, accept, and truly open his heart to wherever God's leaving him?
I mean, 100%.
Really?
I was having a conversation yesterday. I had a final callback for a very important Broadway show that I really would love. And I was listening to gospel music all day. And there's a way that because it was so important to me, I really wanted to be in worship all day. Subconsciously, I guess.
Yeah.
And I saw a friend at the audition who I've known for many years, Brian Stokes Mitchell's wife. Brian Stokes Mitchell. Sure. His wife, Allison, is a really great friend of mine. And she was at the audition, and we started talking about her son going to college. And I said, wow, he's so handsome, and he's going to school for engineering at Purdue. And she's like, yeah, the village raised him. And she said, you're a part of that village. And I said, well, thank you for saying that, but it's your child, and we were just talking about how, faith and praying to God will sort of like get you through. And even my best friend was like, just say a prayer before your audition and get you through. And I found a song that really clicked with my spirit that I've never heard before. And I played it nonstop in the car with me all day. And I just felt like if I just kept that going for me all day, that some good would come out of my audition or my world or my life that day, So I am a 100% believer in that,
We had Brian Stokes Mitchell on, where he talked about the challenge for him of raising that beautiful child of yours, and that he had him later in life, and what it was like to be a dad not so young. And now, anyone looking at your resume, which is obviously available online, sees you working and working and working. But even an actor who works regularly's life, there are parts that you do go out for that you don't necessarily get. When you know you're perfect for a part, but you don't get it, how does E. Clay deal with disappointment, rejection, putting it in perspective when you know that should have been mine?
Well, I do believe what God has for you is for you. And actually, a really good friend of mine, it's on his voicemail when you call him. What God has for me is for me. So that's what he would always say. And his name was Terry Lavelle. And that always stuck with me. And I do believe that God never, you know, puts you in the wrong place, I suppose. So if I didn't get it, it wasn't for me. It wasn't his will, you know? So maybe just auditioning that day, there has to be a reason for it. You know, maybe I made it down to the end because I had to impress the casting director for another project.
Yeah.
Or, you know, maybe I'm going to work with that director one day. And that is only going to be sparked from this audition. Maybe meeting them and them seeing me is maybe going to be something for the future. And I think we have to always keep at the positive. We can't always stay in the moment and think about, oh, why didn't I get that? It takes me 24 hours to get it out of my system, to tell you the truth. You know, I always need to do something bad, like go eat something bad, or, you know, go to the casino or something, you know. But I think ultimately I do believe that if it wasn't meant for me, it's not for me at that moment in time. And something else is sparking from this that God has in store. And I don't know what it is. And it's much bigger than I am.
You know, when this pandemic began, for a parish like mine, 3,000 families, most people come to church. But because of the COVID thing, we had to go online with Mass. And now, any given Sunday, there's 8, 9, 10,000 people from around the country watching. My point is that it's a positive thing that came out of something very negative. In the same way, you are not just an actor, as people know by listening to the introduction to our program, you're now very, very much a producer as well. When COVID is such an affliction to the arts, how have you been able to spin this in your own head, like to see the positive in a seemingly negative situation?
You know, I stayed positive throughout the majority of the pandemic. It wasn't until we were getting to the sort of extended version of this. Right? I've kind of started, my spirit was getting very dampened. I was like, ooh, geez, I really thought we'd be out of this by now.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just always think, oh, this is just going to be a moment in time. This obviously is much bigger than me. You know, obviously when we were going through Black Lives Matter movement and, you know, George Floyd and, you know, the presidency and all of that was going on. This was much bigger than just COVID. I think it was a perfect storm of all of this had to happen for America to be better, to get better in some way, shape, or form. You know, there were a lot of things that were kicked under the rug for a lot of years, and now it's all coming to light, you know? Yeah. So I think that was the reason why this was all happening. But now that if this has been extended into this extended sort of version of the pandemic, you know, I'm still trying to find positivity in it. And it's, you know, we all kind of struggle sometimes about, okay, when is this going to be over? Yeah. How are we going to get through this? And I really just, you know, just try to think of the future. And like I said before, just thinking that there's a reason for all of this. In some way, shape, or form. There's a reason why, you know, my show that I produced, Chicken and Biscuits, fell to COVID. And there's a reason, you know, all of this is happening the way it did. I think without COVID, I wouldn't have a Broadway show to produce and to be my debut as a lead producer. So I'm thanking the pandemic in some ways. In some ways, I'm like, you know, so there's a rhyme to the reason, you know.
Now, you know, you mentioned, I'm glad you did the killing, the murder of George Floyd, because we've had to focus a lot on that in church life. But I mention it because the church has been saying for ages, you know, racism is a sin. But now for the first time, people are starting to talk about it like you're talking about me. And I mention that, though, because in confession, you know, a distinctly Catholic thing, but in confession, people will talk about all sorts of sins. It's the rare person who will say, by the way, I heard your homily on racism. I think that might be true of me. For some reason, admitting it is just so hard for people. Yeah. What have you hoped that we would get from the experience of George Floyd's martyrdom and hopefully an improved situation, not just in America, but around the world in terms of moving past racism? Are you in a hopeful place, or are you pulling back saying, oh, I thought there was hope, but now there's not?
Well, I'm still hopeful. I think shedding the light on racism, shedding a light on everything that comes with it, stigmas and microaggressions and things that people maybe didn't realize before that they did or that they said. And I think it woke people up finally. I think sometimes we are now getting carried away with it, as a people. Meaning, I think that we're now using racism as an excuse in many ways. I'm not saying for everything. I think people are now using it as an excuse. Meaning, a Black person quickly running to the race card and, with situations, but not really thinking through things or not really dealing with, the problem at hand. It's a sticky sort of subject to even talk about, because I don't really want to say the wrong things, as it's all very important, but I just think that it's shedding a great light on, like I said, what was kicked under the rug for so many years. And I think a lot of people, even though we were past all of that sort of in the 60s, and I think people who are now currently saying, well, I've never did that to you. I never said you did, but you're learning from your ancestors. And I think you don't know your privilege, and you have to allow yourself to realize how you were living and how you were acting and reacting to other cultures other than your own. I think we all need to wake up to that.
In my Catholic high school, there were 600 students in each class, and Charlie LaSista was the only African-American in our class. And I never thought much of it back then, but at one of the reunions, I said, what was it like to walk into an auditorium with 650 white kids and be the only guy who was Black? And I think now, at least, I'm mindful of that. I don't think we were even thinking in terms of what it must be like to have to deal with that, and you certainly, I want to go to something related to acting and not so much producing, but I'm fascinated by it. We are certainly living in a culture that loves, worships, treasures youth. When you're an actor, and a lot of your people's appreciation comes from talent in acting and singing and dancing, but also, you're young. How well has E. Clay put in perspective the reality that all of us are going to age, but you're in a business where youth is celebrated really a lot. So what do you do with this whole question of aging well?
In the entertainment business, youth is celebrated a lot. But I'm noticing when I first started, I was so young. I looked 12 when I was in my 20s, what I mean? And when I was in my 30s, I looked more like I was 20, Right. And now that I've managed to get to the ripe age of 45, I am seasoned enough, but now I'm finally finding this man that I'm kind of magically sort of grown into. And our business does celebrate older actors. And it's just if you're willing to transition into that. And, there's always going to be roles for the dad. Like I have a commercial agent that I got over the pandemic, and all of a sudden I'm going in for the dad, like educated dad,
Right.
And I'm like, when did I turn into the dad? Like I remember being in, the musical Hairspray not too long ago and playing a teenager, and now I'm, grade and playing a father, and going out for roles that are now what I am, or what my age is, what my age range is. I'm finding I'm going out for 30s to 50s now, and I'm not going in for the 20s, 30s anymore. So if you allow yourself to age gracefully and be honest with yourself, I think that's the most. You have to be honest with yourself that, what, I love my age, and I have to find positivity in that, and I have to move forward in a great way with that. And if you embrace it, then your industry will embrace it. Whatever industry you're in, will embrace that, I think. I mean, for my industry.
I had seen Ain't Too Proud, loved it, but I have to admit that when I watched it, I thought to myself, I want the secret of whatever they're drinking, that these guys up there can do 8 shows a week and not like be completely burnt out. So having been on the Broadway stage and done that kind of thing, What's the secret of the energy level you need to make it fresh for every kid sitting out there for whom this might be their first Broadway play? And even though you've done it 100 times, for them, it's
Yeah.
got to be fresh. How do you do it?
Well, it's something I love to do. So, it's my passion, or it definitely was my passion for a lot of the years. Now that my passion is actually changing.
Mhm.
But, you have to learn, and I think you just get this by experience or training, as you train in theater, that you have to learn how to pace yourself. You know what I mean? You
Mhm.
know that you have these 8 shows, and as you're rehearsing a show, you know what you have to hit mark wise, choreography wise, or scene wise. And then there's those down times when you're not up front, where
Okay.
I can take a pause and maybe not give my 100% because it's not my turn to. And, you just have to learn how to pace yourself as an actor, as a singer. Can't overutilize your voice. You have to really know how, and I think that comes from training and experience of really getting through 8 shows,
You become this very successful actor and dancer and singer. And here's what I'm wondering. When people start blowing smoke up your dress, telling you how great you are, what does E. Clay do to stay humble?
You know, I have a great story about that.
Hmm.
Uh, just getting into that. So when I was doing Lion King, there was a good friend of mine, and I won't say who she is, who, there was a time where because I was working so much and I was sort of still in my 20s, maybe early 30s, I got to a point where my ego sort of got out of control a little bit.
Okay.
And it was her birthday, I think, and we were going to the bar. And I said something that really annoyed her, and she just let me have it with a wallop of what she felt about me and how I've treated her.
Wow.
And it was all due to just being humble, rather than sort of like trouncing around like I was some, hot kid.
Hmm.
And that really hit me. That one conversation that I had with her
Yeah.
totally shut me down for a good while. And I instantly started to become way more humble. I hate talking about myself anymore. I don't like to boast when I'm out in public. My mother does. Like when I'm with my mom, she's always like, oh, we could be at the grocery store and she's telling someone who we don't even know about my Broadway shows. I'm like, Mom, stop, but um, I try to just live a normal life. I've had all these expectations of wanting to be a star when I was younger. And now I just want to be a working actor. I
Yeah.
want to make a difference. I don't want to necessarily be a star in anything. I just want to be able to live a good life and obviously be well off and just live a great life in New York City and do the things that I'm doing. I want to be a working actor and a producer and an investor now. I'm
Yeah.
now reaching to other heights. And when you live in the moment, then all of a sudden God opens up these other doors, windows that you never thought possible.
Yeah.
But I was living beyond myself then. And now I'm just
Okay.
trying to live more in the moment.
Hey, Clay, you should know, by the way, I am the caretaker for my 101-year-old mother who is still telling people how great I am. So your mother may be doing that for the rest of your life. Last question, I promise, but we know of your life in the arts, singer, dancer, actor, but could you, in a capsule, tell people, because most people don't know, what does a producer do?
It depends on what type of producer. There's co-producers and then there's lead producers on a show. But essentially, um, a co-producer raises money for
Mhm.
production, raises funds. So we get investors and we raise towards a capital for the show.
Mhm.
So if a show is worth maybe $5 million, then as a co-producer, you are sort of required to raise a certain amount of money towards the show. And that's basically what your duty is, and to sell the show and get the money or the funds from investors to raise for the capital, towards the capital. And the lead producer would be more creative. You're putting the show, you're helping to put the show on a platform. You're helping to
Mhm.
get the show in that theater or on Broadway, and you're creating the budget, you're creating the departments, you're hiring everybody, you know what I mean? You're basically creating the show from the inside out. It's your duty to sort of get the director, get the show, get everybody on board, get the co-producers on board, and you can obviously raise funds. You're raising funds essentially as well. So it's your job to get that capital.
Sounds like challenging work.
It's very challenging work, and
Yeah.
I'm learning so much. Being thrown into the position of being one of the lead producers on Chicken and Biscuits, for example. Hunter Arnold, who is a more experienced producer and has been out here in so many different great productions. I've learned so much just under his wing and learning how it all kind of happens. And I'm grateful for that. And I think that was one of the reasons why, this show happened is because it gave me such a learning curve now that I can take that into the next production. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, hopefully get that back up, because it should get more attention than it got because of COVID.
Yeah. We just released the licensing for it. So all the theaters around the country can start to produce Chicken and Biscuits.
Excellent. So it may be around for a long, long time, so that we don't lose hope because it has a life of its own. I just want to thank you for being on our program. You are so down to earth and normal and regular. You've had great success. You don't let it go to your head. Whoever that woman is who told you off, God bless her for doing that. God bless your mother God bless your mother for telling you how great you are, because you are. And thank you. Keep on keeping on with the great work you're doing, both as actor and as producer. And again, thank you for being with us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
As we end today's program, I want to thank you all for being with us. If you need to reach out to me for any reason, you can get me at personallyspeakingpodcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to see past episodes, go to YouTube and punch in Personally Speaking with Msgr Jim Lisante. And please don't forget to click like and subscribe. Personally Speaking is also available as a podcast, personallyspeakingpodcast.buzzsprout.com. Or you can go to www.closeencountertv.com or www.ollmp.org, and you'll also find there our weekly mass and homilies. I'm going to encourage you also to look on Facebook at Personally Speaking with Msgr Jim Lisante. We're also now on Instagram at Personally Speaking Podcast. Please share and let others know about Personally Speaking. I'm privileged to serve as host and executive producer of Personally Speaking. Our producer is Lisa Jandovitz. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be with you again next time on Personally Speaking.